What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another Guardians of the Galaxy video, and today let's take a look at the best upgrades you absolutely need to get as early as possible. These will give you some of the best combat advantages you can have and will also make the gameplay a lot more fun, as you will definitely take down groups of enemies in very interesting ways while also looking cool in the process. And also I will go over a quick combat guide to help you a ton, especially if you're dealing with any bullet sponginess. As always, don't forget to leave a thumbs up on the video and let's jump right in. Let's begin with a very early on perk that you should definitely unlock as soon as possible. Of course, I definitely recommend immediately unlocking the component Localizer for a few reasons. The main one is, well, it gives you a general idea when a component is nearby you, because you can now see it being indicated on the top right corner of the screen, and it's also going to reveal in your visor when you pull it up, even if it is behind a wall or behind an obstacle. So you will need those to unlock other perks that will give you more combat advantages. But by far its best usage, in my opinion, is the fact that it gives you a general idea where a hidden room or a secret area might be located. And this was essentially the way I have been using to find the 40+ outfits that you can find in Guardians of the Galaxy. It was by far the best method, since there's no indication in game if you're close to an outfit box, so this would give you a hint there's a secret area nearby, and usually in these hidden areas you would also find a box containing an outfit. Now, as I've said in the previous video, the best and the funnest way to play Guardians of the Galaxy is to use combos and combo your attacks with your team. This will not just provide higher damage, better results, but also a damage multiplier that will make some of the tougher challenges, enemies, and higher difficulties a lot more interesting. That is why I suggest starting things off with the GravStack grenade that you can unlock for Rocket. It's an amazing one, it has a huge AoE, and it pulls everybody on the battlefield in a very tight spot while also suspending them in the air for a number of seconds. This is the best way to pull everybody in so that you can focus your other attacks while also applying a ×1 damage multiplier right off the bat. The next one that I would immediately unlock after this is Gamora's Shadow Strike, her second ability, the one that costs 2 skill points to unlock and also probably one of the best in the game. It's a multi-target attack that deals quite high damage and still applies an easy damage combo multiplier to all of the enemies that are affected. And usually following a GravStack grenade, this will affect probably all of the enemies, or most of them at the very least. And just between these two you already have a ×2 multiplier, but let's keep on going to the next one, which is Groot's Uproot, a second ability as well. You don't really need to unlock this if you don't want to. You can still use his first ability that you have by default to apply another damage multiplier, but Uproot provides a little bit of damage and it is also instant. At the same time, if you want to skip that, you can focus on Drax's Cathethian charge, which is better at providing stagger as he charges into the enemy groups, but it does have a bit of a travel time. And this brings us to the final ability early on that ties this all together to create this really amazing combo, and that is Peter Quill's Fan the Hammer. This is by far the highest damage dealer in the game early on, and even up until you unlock the 4th abilities for the other Guardians, it is amazing as it supercharges your blasters to deal a long barrage of bullets that will melt almost every enemy, but the downside is that it locks you in place for about 5 seconds. So here is an early on setup that I used with the minimal amount of points invested. I would start with Groot's Entangle, which would pretty much stuck every enemy into these roots while also providing a ×1 multiplier. It wouldn't provide any damage yet though. After this, I would immediately follow up with a GravStack grenade from Rocket that would pull everybody in, following up with a Shadow Strike by Gamora, which would bring my damage multiplier to ×3, and finishing things off with the Cathethian charge, for example, for additional stagger, damage, and finally a ×4 multiplier. Let me give you a few examples here of how well that works, cause I don't even reach the point to use the Fan the Hammer on most enemies. They simply melt in mere seconds, and I'm clearing up an entire battlefield of enemies just by using the combos right. Now, of course, course, if there's any lingering enemies like mini bosses or enemies that have multiple health bars, I can simply continue with the Fan the Hammer to finish things off, because I'm also fully taking advantage of that times 3, times 4, maybe even times 5 damage multiplier that I just applied on that target, making things a lot more easy for me. Now eventually you might even completely remove Entangle from this entire setup, simply because you might find it's not needed anymore, and instead just start with the Gravistack Grenade, and somewhere in between Gomora's or Drax's attack you could also pull in an Uproot from Groot for additional spike damage, which is gonna be super helpful in the later stages of the game. And later on you will do a lot of these combos. These are pretty much the setups that you will use mostly, and then squeeze in another ability that you might have unlocked later on in the game. But for the most part, the 2.1s are the strongest in the game. Which also brings us to the next one. You of course unlocked Rapid Reload early in the game because the game kind of forces you, but there's two more that I recommend also very early. One of them is the Perfect Dodge, and the first one that I recommend between these: if you dodge at the correct time, it will instantly slow down time for you, and also remove any cooldown on your blasters and completely remove any overheat on them. The best thing about this is that during this you can completely spam them and it will not overheat at all for as long as that slowdown time effect is still going. And the final one would be the Air Glide. This lets you do exactly what it says it lets you do. It lets you glide while you're shooting, so this is an extra way to stay up in the air for a little bit longer, avoid some of the incoming damage, especially those annoying electricity attacks that some of the enemies might be using. You can also use it as a really nice vantage point to better assess the battlefield, and it's another way to stay up in the air on top of the vantage point ability that you got early in the game. And yeah, that is pretty much it with the best early upgrades you definitely need to get. Now, we haven't talked about your elemental blasters, simply because these are mostly tied to certain points in the main story, and it's not like you can unlock them earlier. Like, you have the Frost Bullets that you unlock quite early in the game, around like chapter 3/4, but otherwise the rest you need to progress quite a bit to get them. Otherwise you also get the Shock Attacks, you also get like a Wind Elemental, and finally the Fire, in that order, but it takes quite a bit of time to unlock all of them. They do have their own strengths and weaknesses. Like, for example, the Frost Bullets are amazing because you can shatter enemies that have previously been frozen, so this is amazing at speeding up some of the takedown animations in the game, while also just stunning enemies and keeping them still. Shock is good at just having them jump between enemies, so you can electrocute a big group of enemies at the same time. Wind is just good at like pulling targets in, especially the annoying snipers. Yeah, it's definitely something you can use them, and also use that to throw enemies if you press the button again. But Fire is the last one, the one that deals the highest damage and likely what you will use in the end game, so I don't really want to spoil anything here in that regard. This is it for now though. Thank you so much for watching. As always, don't forget to comment, like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.